Everyone, this is John Craig.
And this is Sandi.
And you are watching and you're with us on Walking in Spirit and Truth on this third day of the week.
It's surprise. John Craig is here.
I am here. Yay!
Dun, dun, dun. What does that mean?
It means I'm here. It means I'm not traveling like to some Timbuktu somewhere.
It has been a long time.
It's been many weeks since I've been able to be on.
And then even back then, it was just like one or two shows and you were gone.
Yes. Yep.
So I'm excited that he's here. And if you're joining us and you're here, hey, there's Joe. Hello, Miss Joe. Love you, girl. Come and join us in our chat room if you're listening from Lamb Radio. If not, if you don't want, you don't have to join us in chat. But hey, why don't you go ahead and like this program, share it on your social media, and let's fill the room. Let's fill the house tonight.
Now, I want to say this as we get started here. And one of the things is if you go back and Sandi's been doing a great job on the shows. I'm just going to tell you, I listen to them and they're like, whoa, that's really good stuff. So go back and listen to them. These are all timeless. So you can't just say, oh, it's such date. It must be old stuff. No, this is stuff that will affect you and will help you. So when she was talking about even the operation of tongues and the gift of tongues and all that sort of stuff, just good information, as well as all the stuff that we've had, the rivers and all that beforehand. Well, good information. They all work together. Actually, all flow together. Yeah. That's how we ended up with the tongues in the last series.
It just went that direction.
Yeah. So
I almost got lost today studying for the show, and I was like, oh, we're going to have to do a whole program on that.
So all of the archives are there. Go back and watch them, and you will learn something. I'm telling you. I'm going to tell you, you're going to learn more than just. You're not going to just learn. You're going to be inspired. And that's the best way to say it.
So do you go back and listen to the archives?
I've not, because I usually
are listening live. You don't want to listen to it a second time?
Or I'll go through, if I miss it live because I've been on the road, whatever, I do listen to it in the archive.
Well, that's good. So our point is, share this, listen to it once, listen to it twice, take notes, be an expectation. We want to hear your comments. Literally see your comments, because I like to share them online because you're part of this program as well. And we want to thank you. I want to give you some announcements up front. We're going to bookend it because time is getting close. Sukkot, the Feast of Tabernacles, is almost here. And if you would like to join Life of Worship on our Sukkot, our Feast of Tabernacles, October 13th through the 20th, hey, go to our website, www.lifeofworshipamarillo.org, and sign up. Find out more information. Give us a call. There's a phone number there as well. And email us. Let us know that you're interested, or go ahead and sign up. We would love to have you. I know Miss Joe Cameron is joining us, and I love that.
Woo-hoo.
And we've got the Life of Worship family, and hopefully others are going to be joining us. And it's going to be an exciting time. And so please do that. And
we'd love for you to come. And what's the theme?
It is walking in spirit and truth, fire, water, and wine. Or fire. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, fire, water, and wine. So, yeah, this could be good. Good stuff.
Good stuff, Maynard.
Good stuff, Maynard.
Well, if you didn't remember, our program that we started last week is on worship. And worship is a concept that's sort of been lost amongst the people that are like us. It's being restored, by the way, but it's been lost. In fact, there's a part of us that hungers and thirsts for worship. And it's really only satisfied when you step out. And yeah, worship is many, many things, but I'm talking us physically and demonstratively giving Him praise and worship and honor and glory. And there's something about that fills a hole in our lives. And I've given you the testimony about Jonathan. Jonathan comes from a family that is preachers and teachers and worship leaders, and he does all that himself. And one of the things that he has missed the most, one of his heart's cry, I mean, yes, his family and all that, but outside of the fellowship, and that is leading worship, being a part of powerful worship, not just singing songs. We don't do that. If we're going to, great, you can choose to sing songs, but there's a difference between entering into his presence in worship and praise and honor, giving him honor and glory and just singing songs. But he is longed for that. And Yah is restoring that. No, not like it is if he was in the congregation, not like that, but at least it's a flavor of it.
Yes, it is.
And so we give him glory and honor for that. And sometimes you don't know what you're missing because you've never experienced it. Maybe you've just been in a place that sang songs, so you just leave it out. Well, guys, it's time, because if the angels are worshiping 24/7, what do you think you're going to do? What do you think our position is? Just think about it for a little bit. What is our position in the kingdom? Well, we're worshipers, right? We're worshipers. So hold on just a second. I'm trying to get some things adjusted here because it needs to be close. All right. So with that being said, I thought we might delve into sacrifice and things on worship, but we're not this week. We are going to look at Psalms 100. So everybody get your word out and let's turn to Psalms 100 and let's see what it says. But in the midst of that, I want to give you a definition of worship, a short, concise definition of worship. And it is really giving our Creator, Yehovah, Yahweh, our Elohim, what's rightfully His.
Bottom line, that's it. It belongs to Him.
Easy definition. I mean, we can expand it, and we will expand it throughout this study. But that's something you need to think about. I'm also going to recommend, here's a book, and it's called The Audience of One. And it's about worship by Mike Pilavachi, and it's old, so I don't even know if it's in print anymore. Here's what the book looks like. When I read it the first time 20 years ago, whatever it was, it was just, it's just really good. It's just really, really good. So I encourage you, look at it yourself. If it's still in print, if not, maybe it's in a library or somebody else's library or something.
Or go to Amazon. Amazon has a lot of those old books. Sometimes you got to pay a lot for
Mike
them.
Pilavachi is actually, he is South African and moved to Britain, and he leads worship. He was Matt Redman's worship pastor and youth leader. Yeah. And he's a character. That's all I can say. I've never seen him dress in anything but a big, loud shirt. Hawaiian, South African maybe type of shirt. I don't know. So anyway, that's the book.
Yeah, because he's got a big, loud personality.
He's got a huge personality. Let's go ahead and read Psalms 100. Y'all have your Bibles open? Do you have your scripture open? Let's read it together.
All right. So here we go. Psalm 100, verse 1. Shout joyfully. Let me rephrase that. Shout joyfully to Yahweh, all the earth. Serve Yahweh with gladness. Come before him with joyful singing. Know that Yahweh himself is God, Elohim. It is he who has made us and not we ourselves. We are his people and the sheep of his pasture. Enter his gates with thanksgiving and his courts with praise. Give thanks to him. Bless his name, for Yahweh is good. His loving kindness is everlasting, and his faithfulness to all generations.
All right. That tiny little 5-verse psalm can teach us so much about worship. Well, first off, I want you to see it doesn't, the whole thing doesn't start out as a request. It's a command. First, notice that.
It's in the imperative when you look at it in the English.
It is commanding you to do. Make a joyful noise, or one version, shout with joy. Both of those are imperative. They're saying, do it. It's a command. Do we sort of miss those things?
I think so.
We might look at the commands, that are.
No, I think we should just gather around the table and have our little study.
Well, no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that we look at the commands, these physical other things to do, but we forget this. This is a command.
Yeah, it is a command. Yeah, because in the imperative, it's where it says shout joyfully. It's literally meaning you shout joyfully. Yeah, I mean, that's like an audience of one type of thing. You individually, but it can also mean you as a congregation, which means that, yes, everybody needs to join in together because the command is for all of us individually and as we come together as one.
That's right. Now, I want to get in. We're going to briefly touch and go with some Hebrew terms real quick concerning worship. We will probably get it. We will get into more depth on those. But what I'm wanting to do is bring this psalm and read it with some Hebrew terms interspersed with it and see if it gives a greater depth of meaning to it. So I'm going to brush over some Hebrew words for it right now. So worship, that's worship. But one of the primary words for worship in Hebrew is shakah. All right. So remember that. And the primary Greek word for worship is proskameu. Okay. So we've got both of those terms. Now here's one, and it's halal, Halal. And you may say, well, what is that? That is actually describing praise, but not just praise. Oh, I praise you. No, it's exuberant praise. When I think of exuberant, when you think of that adjective, what do you think of? Exuberant.
Exuberant. It's the same type of thing when David was dancing as they were bringing the ark into Jerusalem, and he took all of his clothes down to his ephod, and he was just like out there so much that his wife was like, what are you doing? You're supposed to be a king. And he said, I'll even be more undignified than this.
To me, it's something that's not contained. It is complete abandon in your actions before him, giving literally every part of you. You exuberantly praise him. You don't care anymore you don't care what people are saying. You don't care what kind of scene you might be making, because it's really about you and him. And that's what that book is about. Our worship. We have an audience of one when we worship. It's irrelevant. It's irrelevant who's looking at us, what kind of fool we may be being, how we sing, how we dance. We have one person we worship. That's it.
Well, you know what I was going to say? What do people do when they're inebriated? In other words, all of their inhibitions are just kind of fall off. They just kind of relax, and they're like out there in front of you, and they don't care. And a lot of times people are just having a grand old time with their situation, whatever. Okay, I'm using that as an example, not endorsing that, but I'm just simply saying, what do people do when their inhibitions are dropped? The walls come down. They get exuberant. So maybe we should draw this correlation, is that being connected and being filled with the Spirit may allow us to let those walls come down, and we won't care about what anybody else thinks.
Oh, I think the enemy will always try to make us care, but it's a choice not to.
And so if we can just, and here's the other thing, once you start doing it, you just do it. And when you do it, who cares? Because all of a sudden, like, hey, that wasn't so hard anyway. And you know what? Nobody's watching me. Everybody's doing their own thing. It's because it's not about us. It's about him. And we want that full expression to be released unto him. That's the way it should be.
Yeah. And you're right. You're absolutely right. But here's something really interesting about halal. When you look at each of the Hebrew letters, and like I said, we're going to get into more detail on each of them later. But when you put the Hebrew letters together for halal, it means behold the tongue. The tongue is made for praise. Wow. Has the enemy not confiscated the vehicle made for praise and caused it to be, oh my, sorry guys. I keep looking at my hair and it's crazy tonight because I don't even want to, I'd rather not be on camera. That's all I can say.
You got the wild stuff going on.
That's what happens. That's what happens. So anyway, but think about how the enemy is counterfeited so much. The tongue is a fire, but and it's generally used to tear things and people, even your own life, down. But when you look at halal in the letters, it's the tongue is made. Behold the tongue. The tongue is made for praise. I don't know. I just thought that was really powerful.
It is really powerful. And, we use our tongue. And how many times have we used our own tongue, or somebody has used their tongue to quench the praise?
Well, I'm not thinking that. I think we end up praising other things.
Or we praise other things. And they say, well, we don't do that in our congregation. No, seriously. But we hear these different things. We hear the stories about different people. We see and we watch, we observe. And then I look at the biblical record and I'm saying something's not adding up. Why? So, yeah, Al Henry says, fluff, fluff. Exactly.
I saw. I agree.
There you go.
But you just lost your train of thought.
No, it was funny. Good.
Oh, well. Okay. Tehillah. What does that mean? It's a song of praise. And then zamar is a Hebrew word for making music accompanied by strings. And yada. There you go.
Bass. Play the bass.
Okay. Play the bass. Play air bass. Can you make a little bit of sound?
Okay.
He is the bass player on our worship team.
I don't do that when I play. I don't do that.
No, he does this. And his worship leader, me, tries to get his attention, and he's staring at his strings for a song he's been playing for 20 years.
No, actually, I'm not. I'm just like off into a whole different realm. I've gotten over into the left side of my brain.
But what did your worship leader ask you to do?
Stay on the right side of the brain.
Anyway, Yadah, at Y-A-D-A-H, it means extending the hands, and we're going to get into that. Extending the hands in thanksgiving and praise, or in thanksgiving and comma or semicolon, thanksgiving and praise. And Todah is a word for thanks and offering, and Barak is a word for kneeling to Yah in humble submission. So I want you to think about just those short definitions. If you wrote them down, if you had time, well, like I said, we're going to break them down a little bit more here in a little bit, maybe.
And always rewind. You can go back and re-listen to it.
That's true. I forgot about that. Yes, we can.
Yep.
So when we go back to the English version of this verse, enter his gates with thanksgiving and enter his courts with praise. Give thanks to him. Bless his name. Okay. I'm sure that you have that old song, I will enter his gates with thanksgiving in my heart.
I will enter his courts with praise.
I will say this is the day. Okay.
Woo.
Going back 20 something years, but
30
years. There you go. Going back 30 years to dig that one up. But when you use scripture songs, they stick in your head.
Almost
the
40.
Scriptures stick in your head. Okay. You are dating us. Anyway, when we see that is what we've grown up. That's what we've learned is that version. And it's okay. But the Hebrew has so much more depth in it. So if we enter his gates with a gift of thanks, Todah. Now, what did I say that meant? The short definition of it. I told you that it meant a thank offering. So we enter his gates with a gift, and that's what that is. It's a gift, an offering, Todah. His course with Tehillah, songs of praise. Raise your hands in thanksgiving, Yadah, to him. Humbly kneel before his name. Now I'm going to say that. I'm going to skip the Hebrew words because the meanings are there. Enter his gates with a gift of thanks, his courts with songs of praise. Raise your hands in thanksgiving to him. Humbly kneel before his name. I'm actually going to stick that in the chat.
Yeah.
What do you think? Does that that's a much fuller picture of what that verse means. Enter his gates. I'm going to start with the English again. Enter his gates with thanksgiving, his courts with praise. Give thanks to him and bless his name. Okay, that's good. But how much more depth does this have? Enter his gates with a gift of thanks, his courts with songs of praise. Raise your hands in thanksgiving to him. Humbly kneel before his name.
It's really, really, really cool. If you kind of think about it, it goes from this exuberance to this humbling.
That's like it oftentimes is in our services. Most of the time we enter with this exuberant or this passionate music. Of course, we'll do this. We'll start with something that takes you there. As service begins, we bring it up, and we actually just do what the Spirit leads us to do too. But it's that picture. Many times people do faster songs of thanks and praise, and it enters into this worship atmosphere after. And that sort of gives that same picture, the quieter or the more contemplative time where you're on your knees before him. So I love that. And so now let's go to a few different concepts within that. So Shakah is what I said earlier, that is the primary word for worship in the Tanakh. It is, but it is one of many. So just understand that. But it is a primary word. And I want you to understand that praise is a gift. It is your gift. It is a gift. It is, I believe that praise and worship, they are part of those evening and morning sacrifices that are put before him. Last night at our Torah talk, I talked about the blood and washing in the blood and pleading the blood and what that means, because we've actually been doing a series now for quite a while on the blood. And we talked about, just as we bring forth that Olah offering that's completely burnt before him, and what's burnt, we're burnt, we put ourselves on the altar, but also there's that evening and morning sacrifice. And Messiah, we know, was the lamb. He was the fulfillment of that. He was the ultimate sacrifice. And within that, I challenged everybody to not only to make sure that you spend time in worship, praising him, giving him all that's due him every morning and every evening, but also at the same time to literally prophetically wash yourself with the blood of the Lamb. The congregations that have done this have found changes within 80 to 85%. And I don't mean doing it out of rote. I mean doing it out of heart, from healing and deliverance and so much more. And you may say, why would we do that? Well, first off, before you even approach him, there's the concept of teshuvah that needs to come in, repentance. And with the repentance, then we, that thanksgiving and that praise and that worship begins to rise up within us as we put ourselves on the altar in our lives and say, here's all of me, here I am. And we give him those gifts before him. And then that blood does as we're purified then, like washed with the water of the word and purified. But then that blood of the Lamb does so much more. And we've gone into the physical manifestation as compared to the spiritual well, no, not even spiritual, what Yah's done, the blood both ways. And it's very significant. But washing yourself with the blood and giving forth your praise in the morning and the evening, just as the sacrifices, what a difference that can make. That's a challenge to you. I gave an example last night. Go before them, and they said, well, how do you do that? Well, it's a prophetic act, but yet it's your words that are going forth. First, you need to understand what the blood has done. And I said, do it just like you're taking a shower. Say, Father, everything that my eyes have seen that I should not have seen, I repent before you. I teshuvah. I say, Father, forgive me from allowing my eyes to see this or that, or to see things that are not from you. And Father, right now I wash my eyes with the blood of Yeshua. And you go through just wash and give him praise and honor and glory. Anyway, that is a big rabbit trail to what we've been talking about on our Monday night teachings. But anyway, I challenge you, begin to give him that spend that time in worship twice a day. Well, do it all day, but specifically twice a day, just giving him what's due him. Remember what I said, the basic definition of the word for worship is just a bottom line. Remember what I said? Giving Yah what's rightfully his. It's rightfully his.
Yes, it is. It is. And, we were created to worship. I mean, we have a vocal cord. We have these hands
and our tongue,
as we said. We have these hands, these feet, these. They can be used for noble purposes, or they can be used for common purposes. We one of the things that we understand, studying out the Hebraic roots of our faith, is understanding what is clean and unclean. Well, the concept is here, using our body is to be used for those noble purposes as opposed to common purposes, those things that we should be separated from, and those things we are separated unto.
That's right.
And there's a big difference in understanding. One should not touch the other, and we understand that in when we through the principles of what is clean and unclean.
So remember that your praise, your and by the way, that dance is just as much worship too. Most cultures dance. It's us that get hung up here in our culture.
That's true. And you know what? It's in the Western cultures, the men don't dance.
And in Israel, the most powerful thing is when you see the men get out there.
When
and dance.
the men do most of the dancing. Well, I won't say that. Men and women.
No, they
do
don't
the
do
dancing.
most, but it's powerful.
It is very powerful.
I know that when I put some things together, some really, really neat things together, with dance in them, that I've had sections before where I have the men. We have a song called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, and it's powerful. It's hitting like this. And I have the men come and do these things together. And you can feel a shift in the atmosphere because it's almost warlike.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like what Joe had put in the comments earlier, how Tova describes that worship is worship.
Worship, yeah. And
because
you know
it's
what?
Powerful. It's a powerful tool against the enemy.
What's really interesting too, I don't know if any of you have ever listened to the K-Love. It's the Christian station that's got satellites everywhere, but they have shifted. They've shifted in the last year or 6 months or 8 months. I don't know, but they now call it the station of worship. And I just, because it's true. And I just find that interesting. And anyway, so remember your praise, your worship, it's a gift before him. Are you going to hold back the one thing you can give him, yourself, your gift, that sacrifice of praise? So, it's the offering we present before him. And remember, we are encouraged to offer our praise through song. Remember, we talked about last week that we have a singing Yah. We have a singing God. He loves music. He is said to have sung creation into existence. If we look at Zephaniah 3:17, just as a reminder, Yahweh, our Elohim, is in your midst, a mighty one who will save. He will rejoice over you with gladness. He will quiet you with his love. He will exult over you with loud singing.
So he sings loudly over us.
He isn't mumbling.
Nope.
He isn't whispering his song.
Nope.
He's loudly singing over us. Can you imagine?
He's not afraid of his own voice.
The gift giver loudly singing over us, and we give him nothing or silence or fold our hands and say, you know what? I'm just going to watch you sing. I don't need to do anything else. I'm good.
It's not a spectator sport.
No, I would say, and that would be so disrespectful and irreverent, and is where I'm going with that.
You know what? My picture is over in Revelation, where you have a sea of believers, and out of that sea, you've got these worshipers of heaven, and then you have all this sea of believers that are out there, and the song of the Lamb comes out from them. The congregation begins the song. It's not the worship team, and it begins to overwhelm. And what we were talking about the other day, and in fact, you were talking about, was it on the Let Us Reason Together on Monday? We're talking about the Brooklyn Tabernacle Choir. No, it was on the War Room on Monday.
Yeah, Psalm 34. And Joe posted it on Facebook. I saw that. Thank you, Joe.
Oh my goodness, because they got a huge choir in the Brooklyn Tabernacle Choir, but there's the choir and there's the congregation, and the choir is worshiping. I mean, they're worshiping, but the congregation, they switch over to them and they're worshiping, and they get to the end of this series of worship, and it just doesn't stop. It kind of lulls, and then the wave hits, and it's like going back from the congregation to the choir to the congregation and back and forth. My goodness, that's when that's hitting the peak of worship. You've totally been translated into another realm.
It is. Wow, that's all I can say. But what an extraordinary image of Yah. Can you just picture that? Him singing over you, him loudly singing over you, because he's excited over you. He loves you. He loves you. He wants to be with you. How much more should we want to be with him? He wants to be with you so much that he gets excited about his people, and he bursts into this joyful, loud singing, and he's singing over you, about you, over you. We worship a Yah that delights in all those who would love him. He's not distant or indifferent to us and to what's going on in our life, or, about our praise. He's rejoicing in his love, lavishing his love upon you with loud singing. I just love that. Imagine while we sing praises to Yah that he joins us in song. And we talked in more depth about that last week, and a little bit more, not much, but it's just something we should not hold back. Joe said worship is not to stop, it's to be 24/7. And that's exactly right. So we have this gift that we've given him, and we're singing and rejoicing with him, and understand that we're physical beings, and that praise should reflect that in our action.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
In other words,
it's demonstrative.
Our body needs to respond to what's going on in our spirit.
That's right.
And
I'm just singing in my heart. I'm dancing before him in my mind.
I can see that.
No,
but I'm serious. I'm making fun, because that's where a lot of people are like inside themselves, but they got to let it out. And the spirit is ready; it's always willing. But then you got the soul. That soul,
that flesh,
it filters.
Mind, will, and emotions.
That the mind, will, and emotions have to work with the spirit. In fact, the spirit,
our flesh.
Yeah, and it needs to get through that filter where I determine, which is I will to do this. Because a lot of times praise and worship is a choice, and that is what our will is about. We choose to, and it's not where everybody else has gotten to the exuberance and we're just carried there. No, at some point in time, we choose to as well.
It's a choice. And that's exactly right. And understand that when we physically begin to demonstrate that, and I'm not talking, I know some of you out there that are listening aren't able to dance as you would like to dance.
True.
Or things like that. But if your legs may not work, but maybe your hands do, and your voice does, and your arms do. Or maybe you don't have arms, but whatever it is, there's a way to demonstrate that. And I always challenge people, go beyond what you're comfortable with. Do that. But we also understand that praise involves not only singing and rejoicing in that manner, but it's also humble submission, that barak, that kneeling before Yah in humble submission. So we see that progression, as you spoke about earlier, the progression in the verse, that we come into his gates and we offer our gift of thanksgiving, and we walk into his court singing his praise, and we approach his throne. We lift up our hands with surrender and thanksgiving and praise. And finally, we kneel before him and say, here I am. Here I am. Now, it's just beautiful. And we're going to continue. We're going to break this down. That was just a quick overview, just a quick, fast overview. I know one little 5 verses, but it's going to take us a while. So something that, as I was studying this out, I will enter his gates. I will enter his gates with thanksgiving in my heart. The word gate stuck out to me. And by the way, I decided we're going to do a whole show on gates.
I'm just sitting, my mind is kind of going off on gates right now, by the way.
Well,
there's something really powerful about entering his gates.
It is. And oh my goodness, I was like, well, this would take the whole show. And maybe that's okay. But gates, it is Sha'ar, S-H-A apostrophe A-R. Here, I'll stick it in here for you guys. Sha'ar, S-H-A, is gates. There we go. Oh, not Gares, gates. Did I do it right this time? Yeah. Okay. So understand that the gates, we're just going to look at something specific right now. Gates, besides being a part of the city, it protects against invaders. So we've got that. The city gates were a place of activity. They were a place of business, and transactions were made there. Court was convened. Public announcements were heralded. And accordingly, you always saw them sitting at the gate. We know that Deborah sat at the gate. We know that. And what did she do? Deborah, the judge.
She was the judge. Yeah.
Right.
People would bring their issues to her and she would make decisions.
So in Proverbs 121, it says, at the head of the noisy streets, she cries out. In the gateways of the city, she makes her speech. And that's wisdom being personified there. So she spreads her words to the maximum number of people, and wisdom was taken to the gates. So what do we have here? Gates. And I think we will do a whole show on gates. Don't you think that would be fascinating?
I think we should.
Okay.
I think we should, because right now I have something that I want to say about gates. And
Can you hold it just for like 1 second?
Yes.
Okay, more than 1 second, because 1 second already passed.
Okay.
Okay, hold on. I'll hold that here.
Okay, I'm holding. All right.
So gates basically symbolize the entrance, like into the city. It could be also into the tabernacle, the temple, the palace, the camp, the city itself, the walls. And remember, the walls surrounded the cities and the towers flanked the gates, and elders met at the gates, and kings sat at the gate to meet meet people and make legal decisions, and priests and prophets delivered their messages where?
At the gates.
At the gates. Gates were the marketplace, and outside the gates, what happened there? People were condemned. Criminals were condemned outside the gates. People met death and punishment outside the gates of the city. So, so jump in there.
Okay.
Do you remember?
Yeah, I do remember. All right. So, and this may be jumping way forward, but we can always jump back to what we're talking about. But I mean, I want you to picture this, because over in Revelation chapter 4, what do we have? It says here, immediately in verse 2 of Revelation chapter 4, I was in the spirit, and behold, a throne was standing in heaven, and one sitting on the throne, and he who was sitting was like jasper stone. And it goes on and talk about him, and then about Yeshua. And then it says, and around the throne were 24 thrones, and upon the thrones I saw 24 elders sitting clothed in white garments and golden crowns on their heads. Now, does the throne room also kind of look like gates, perhaps? And it says, and from the throne proceeds flashes of lightnings, and it goes on about these living creatures that are there. And then in verse 10, the 24 elders will fall down before him who sits on the throne and worship him, and who lives forever and ever, and will cast their crowns before the throne, and they worship. And they worship. And this is at the gates. So think about, this is at the throne, but picture at the gates. That's where the elders met. Those are the ones who are passing the judgments and doing the commerce and making decisions for the city. This is the 4 and 20 elders. What are they doing? They're gathered around the throne. They're getting this bird's eye view of the throne of Yah right there. And then if you jump forward, then we've got in chapter 5, verse 11, it says, I looked and I heard the voice of many angels around the throne, and living creatures and elders. And the number of them was myriads and thousands of thousands, saying with one loud voice, worthy is the Lamb. They're worshiping. So we got the elders. Now we got the angels. And then as you read a little bit further on in the book of Revelation, and it goes in and it talks about the sea of glass, which talks about this description of the congregation that is gathered there. It's all right there. The illustration of what's happening right there at the gates.
At the gates.
The throne, the gates, where the business, the transaction of heaven is taking place.
Wow. That's so good.
Wow. Yeah, because when I'm thinking about who's sitting at the gates, well, the elders are, and then it was the 24 elders.
But so I almost picture this throng. Here you have this throng of people at the gates.
Yeah, yeah. It's just like you got the inner group, and you got the outer group, and they're all hanging out. They're all vying for position.
And what are they doing?
They're worshiping.
They're worshiping.
You know, and everyone that's worshiping, there's not like one person left out. It doesn't matter what the distance is from the throne. They're all worshiping.
Joe said that the soldiers and the king enter the gates of the city after they win the war. And usually they parade. It's paraded. They enter through the gates and they parade before the people. Would you go ahead and read Revelation 21:27?
21:27.
Revelation 21:27.
Okay. I got to get there before I get to the helps. Okay, 21, 27. All right. And it reads, and nothing unclean and no one who practices abomination and lying shall ever come into it, but only those whose names are written in the Lamb's book of life.
Into it. What are we referring to there? It's gates. So Yah's gates are shut to the unclean. Yah's gates are shut to whom?
To nothing unclean and no one who practices abomination and lying shall ever come into it.
Oh,
that's pretty serious. I mean, I think about what's going on in our world today, that everything is a lie. Everything is a lie. Nothing, no truth is allowed to come forth, only what they want you to believe as truth. And you think about those, that's where the true cover up is. It is the truth is being hidden so that only what they want you to know. That is truly occult practices that
right.
we're living through in today. And those are the ones, they're liars.
Right. You know, Yeshua went to his death in our place. Where? Outside the city, outside the gate. Even though he lived inside the veil, there was no sin in his life. He was the Torah. He was the Torah, the living, walking Torah. He's God. But he made it possible for us to enter through the gates and into the courts, even into the Holy of Holies. And I know there are some out there that believe that's not so. But if we are kings and priests, and we are also the temple, where does he reside? Remember in Hebrews 7:18, I believe, when it talks about that the law was fulfilled and so many lose themselves in that scripture, we're talking about the change in priesthood there. We're talking about a shift to the Melchizedek, to him as our high priest.
That's right.
And we've got to remember there's a shift. There's a shift.
It's, honestly, it's a new elevation.
It's an elevation. It's a return to what once was,
right.
Actually.
Yeah, from the Levitical priesthood that's one elevation. But when you bring in Yeshua as the Melchizedek priest,
right,
that is an elevation which really takes our worship to a new level.
Right, because he's the new and living way. He is the way. He is the truth. He is the life. Yes, that's an idiom for the Torah, but wow. And it's Joe said, it's the secret place, the Holy of Holies, and we're supposed to go to the secret place, right? So the first mention of gate is actually found in Genesis 19:1. Genesis 19:1.
I got that somewhere in my Bible.
So maybe in Genesis 19:1.
Maybe in Genesis 19:1, it's there.
You think?
Yeah, because I didn't tear that part of the Bible out.
Well, I pray you didn't tear any part of the word out. That would be horrible.
I've not deleted anything in my Bible. Okay, except when it mistranslates. All right, then you have to write the correction out. Okay, I digressed. Let's go to Genesis 19:1. Now the two angels came to Sodom in the evening, as Lot was sitting in the gate of Sodom. When Lot saw them, he rose to meet them and bowed down with his face to the ground.
So why was he at the gate? He was one of the leading men of the city. He was discussing what was going on, judgments. Who knows? But business and everything was done at the gate. So he was right there. And that's that first mention of gate, Genesis 19:1. And we also see that that's where the parents took the rebellious son and were told to bring him to the city gates. And the elders would examine the evidence and pass judgment. That's Deuteronomy 21:18-21. We can turn there and look at it real quick. Deuteronomy 21:18-21.
All right, Deuteronomy 21. Devarim 21.
18 through
18.
21.
And if any man has a stubborn and rebellious son who will not obey his father or his mother, and when they chastise him, he will not even listen to them, then his father and mother shall seize him, bring him out to the elders of his city, at the gateway of his hometown, and they shall say to the elders of his city, this son of ours is stubborn and rebellious. He will not obey us. He is a glutton and a drunkard. Then all the men of the city shall stone him to death. So you shall remove the evil from your midst, and all Israel shall hear of it and fear.
Okay. Joe actually said he screened everyone before they could enter the city through the gates. Okay. So what you just read, we show that community took action right there at the gate. Right there at the gate. It was a community action place. But we also find it, let's see, I think I lost something. We also find it as in Ruth 4, 1 through 11, where Boaz officially claimed his position as the kinsman redeemer by meeting the elders where?
At the gate.
At Bethlehem. And there, the legal matters related to his marriage to Ruth were settled. It was all taken care of right there at the gate. So we're even talking the daily issues of life or, marriage.
So he got
kinsman redeemer.
Got his marriage certificate there, didn't he?
Yeah, at the gate. So we have that, and that's Ruth 4, 1 through 11. I guess you can say something while I stick it in there.
Yeah, so that's really interesting. And I really like what Joe had said is that the elders are sitting there at the city gates because they're screening. They want to screen who's coming in, because ultimately, whether it's someone who's raised in that city, that they're like, hey, your behavior, what's on you is contagious. We don't want it to spread to anybody here. So we're going to remove that from our city. And on the other side of it is seeing somebody come in is like, we don't want your type in our city. Go on your way, because they don't want that, whatever that person's carrying. Usually it's a bunch of spiritual baggage. They don't want it to spread because that spiritual stuff is contagious.
That's right. That's right. And let's look in 1 Samuel 4:18.
That's why we've got a responsibility in our homes. We got to watch who walks over our threshold and comes into our houses. That's a gate.
And who do we invite to dinner? Who are we making covenant with?
Well, the television is a gate. We turn that on, and it is telling us a vision.
This is a gate,
and it may differ from our vision.
That's a gate
of our household.
That's a gate.
So exactly. So those are all very important. So how do we battle that? Well, that's why
I think that's next week's program.
That sounds like maybe some good,
because we're gonna jump on gates. But right now we're going to 1 Samuel 4:18.
All right, I haven't even got there yet.
I know you got lost.
I was just going off 1 Samuel 4:18. I am in 1 Samuel here now. Keep overshooting tonight.
Are you overshooting your scripture?
I am. 1 Samuel 4:18 says, and it came about when he mentioned the ark of God that Eli fell off the seat backward beside the gate, and his neck was broken, and he died, for he was old and heavy. Thus he judged Israel 40 years, unlike Jeffrey Epstein.
John.
What?
That has nothing to do with what we're talking about tonight. Oh my goodness. So we know as Israel combated the Philistines that Eli the priest, he was at the city gates waiting to hear news regarding the ark and how his sons had fared, and ultimately died there. And now let's continue on in 2 Samuel 18, 1 through 5, because here we're going to see when David ruled Israel, he basically stood before his troops, giving them instructions at the city gate. So let's read that.
So that's 2 Samuel 18, 1 through 5.
Yes.
So then David numbered the people who were with him, and he set over them commanders of thousands and commanders of hundreds. And David sent the people out 1/3 under the command of Joab, 1/3 under the command of Avishai and the son of Zuriah, yes, and Joab's brother, and 1/3 under the command of, you just wanted me to say those names, didn't you? Ittai the Gittite. And the king said to the people, I myself shall surely go out with you also. But the people said, you should not go out, for if we indeed flee, they will not care about us, even if half of us die. They will not care about us, but you are worth 10,000 of us. Therefore, now it is better that you should be ready to help us from the city. Then the king said to them, whatever seems best to you, I will do. So the king stood aside beside the gate, and all the people went out by the hundreds and thousands. And the king charged Joab and Abishai and Ittai, saying, deal gently for my sake with the young man Absalom. And all the people heard when the king charged all the commanders concerning Absalom.
Okay, so there we have another example of things occurring at the gate. And then we have David mourning, but he mourned, but he eventually returned to the city gate along with his people. And that's in 2 Samuel 19. We're not going to read it.
All right.
It's too long. 2 Samuel 19, verses 1-8. And the king's appearance at the gate signaled that what? That the mourning was over. So the king appeared at the gate to tell him that the time of mourning was over. Man, the king appears at the gate.
Uh-oh.
And
dun, dun, dun.
Because he was attending, the king was once again attending to the business of governing. So he shows up. The king is at the gate.
You know, when you think about that, when Yeshua pierces through the veil when he returns, what is that saying? Our time of mourning is over. Our bridegroom has come. Oh, that's a whole nother story there. Just think about that.
So you're going to be here for next week's show when we could expand on this? You have to be.
I gotta be.
All right.
All right. Stay tuned.
I'm not going to see. I demand it. So we know that the city gate was really, really important in the, in the ancient Near East culture, in the Hebrew culture. And in Esther 2, verses 5-8, it records that some of the king's servants actually plotted against the king, King Ahasuerus, and Mordecai overheard them at the gate because business is going on there. People are convening and all sorts of things. And he overheard the conspiracy.
What a better place for Mordecai, who is a scribe. He's writing everything down in the business of the city.
And so he goes and tells of the plot, and the news gets to the king. And we see that in Esther 2, verses 19-23. And the Persian court officials were identified as being at the king's gate. It was called the king's gate. So we see in Matthew 16:18 that it says, the gates of hell or Hades shall not overcome it. So here we hear gates mentioned in a different way. The gates of hell will not overcome. And we know that was considered, you preached that sermon on that.
Yeah. The gates of hell. I mean, that's that place in up there in northern Israel where the headwaters of the Jordan is. And was considered one of the portals of where they would sacrifice babies and all that right there. And Yeshua takes this field trip as a one-day field trip with his disciples up from Banyas, there you go.
I had to think. I was going
from Caesarea Philippi, and they come up there, and then he delivers this message there in Matthew 16. Thinking about this, he's like, I'm the way, I'm the gate, and this is not the gate.
Did you think about this? You preached that message right there in Banyas, where Yeshua preached, the gates of hell shall not prevail. You preached it. You could have been standing when you were preaching that message there in Israel. You could have been standing right where Yeshua was and preaching that message. Had you ever thought about that?
Not in those terms. I just knew he delivered that message up there.
But think about that. You gave that message right there.
And Mark said that he did the same thing. He was called on to give that message.
Wow.
So
that's interesting.
Very interesting. Wow.
Well, guess what? This is a to be continued, because there's more to be learned and more to teach and more to discover. Here's my challenge. You guys get ready, because we are still talking about, I will enter his gates with thanksgiving in my heart, and I will enter his courts with praise. We are still talking about that. but I will enter his gates. Let's really research that out. I want you guys that are listening to research it, study it out. And I want to see and hear. I always say hear, see your comments so I can put them on air. And let's study this thing and out and learn from one another. And let's do the show next week.
All right. Sounds good. Well, you've been listening to Walking in Spirit and Truth. We want to let you know that if you want to get in contact with us, Sandi and I pastor together Life of Worship here in Amarillo, Texas. And we have a website, and it is www.lifeofworshipamarillo.org. And so, and Sandi's putting that into the notes right there. So you can go to our website, check us out. And of course, she mentioned this earlier. We are having a Sukkot celebration. And what are those dates?
October 10th through October 13th through the 20th.
And so we would love for you to join us. And we've got this wonderful, just a beautiful campground that we're going to be at. And we were actually there for Shavuot and
Pentecost,
Feast of Pentecost. Yep. And had a wonderful time during that weekend. And so we're going back up there again. It's just a beautiful place. Just, trees, and there's a lake right there. And
well, to a lot of the country that'd be like, eh.
Oh yeah, for us in the Panhandle of Texas,
but it was beautiful.
It's like a refuge. It's just like a refuge and an oasis in the midst of the Great Plains. So we would love for you to join us. And if you have a prayer request or a praise report or something like that, or if you want to connect with us via email, you can see our email when you go to our website. But our email is LOW@lifeofworshipamarillo.org. And if you'd like to partner with us, we certainly need those that will partner with us in prayer
during this time to pray, but also give.
But also, we're looking for those that will partner with us financially to be part of this ministry, to help us get this word on and out, because this is a significant message. We have connected so many different dots with this messianic lifestyle, with this lifestyle of our Hebraic roots of our faith, with so much more as we draw out these things that are from Genesis to Revelation. This is truly the walk of that Yahweh has called us to. And so we would love for you to help support us so we can get this message even further.
Yes.
So well, this kind of brings us to the end of the program. So thank you for joining us today. So on behalf of Walking in Spirit and Truth, this is John Craig.
And this is Sandi.
And until next time, Shalom.